Welcome to Thriving Thoughts, a podcast for women who believe in thriving in any and every circumstance. Every week, we have candid conversations with remarkable women about how they silence the little lies in their minds and overcome their shoulds, coulds, and not enoughs with big truths. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry. Now let's thrive. Hey friends, welcome to episode 3 of Thriving Thoughts. I'm so excited today to bring you my conversation with my new friend, Samantha Barber. Now, something that you need to know about Samantha, about what she's doing right now, is she is operating a nonprofit organization called Reaching Out Now, which you'll hear more about towards the end of the episode. But what I want you to pay attention to is that this conversation to me was like a symphony. Like I can see myself going to the Kennedy Center and listening to this story via music. It is slow and building and methodical and sometimes moments of foreboding. And really, you guys, towards the end, there is this great big crescendo of truth. And I just want you to learn from my friend Samantha, who hails from Antigua, a British Caribbean with a slower, contented way of life. Boy, I want to learn from her some more. And I know you're going to learn from her today too. But listen to her symphony. Soak it up. Listen to every word. Learn about why her story from childhood to adulthood is so important and the work that she is doing now to pour truth into the lives of young girls who are going to become the women like you and me so that we, like she did, can go from the pit to the palace. So turn up the volume, be inspired and encouraged by this symphony of a conversation with my friend Samantha Barber. Good morning, Miss Samantha. Thank you for joining me for the 3rd episode of Thriving Thoughts. I am thrilled to have you on the show. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Sherry. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about our time together.
Me too. You know, it's funny. You and I met probably just not even a month ago, maybe about a month ago. Coming up on a month. Yeah.
Crazy,
And
isn't it?
It's so crazy because, when I was making my list for people I wanted on the podcast, I was thinking about people I already know. But since that time, and I mean, this is only episode 3, God has introduced me to new women in my life. And from the moment that I met you, we met at an event and then we got together for coffee. Later, which was beautiful. And you just shared some of your story with me and what you're doing and these amazing efforts that you're doing to pour into the lives of young girls who are going to be the women who are the next, rising sisterhood. So I just knew at that moment, I was like, girl, I think I even asked you then. I was like, hey, I want you to pray about it and think about it, but you need to be on my podcast.
Yes. And it was such an immediate connection. Yeah. Which sometimes for women, we're very cautious, but there was just such an instant connection when I met you. It was just awesome. Yes. Yeah.
Definitely. So I can't wait to introduce you to the listeners. So, Sam, I'm going to call you Sam because I think you said that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
But okay, one thing I want to talk about, because I know us women, we like to go to beautiful, restful places. And you happen to come from a beautiful, restful place. You come from Antigua, which is amazing because most of us only imagine, visiting Antigua, and you're from there. You were raised there. So, hey, share with us, give us a glimpse into what life in Antigua is like.
Oh my gosh. Antigua is called the gem of the Caribbean. It's 365 beautiful beaches in the eastern side of the Caribbean islands. And
that's a beach for every day of the year.
It is. and life is so chill, there. We find a reason to be off work for everything,
Yeah.
But very traditional though, in life, during times like the carnival season. Oh my goodness, it's the city is shut down for 2 days. The last 2 days of carnival. When I say shut down, things are shut down, and everyone is just in the city dancing, having fun. We have calypso shows and queen shows and teenage pageants, and things like that. And the crazy part that is really different from our tradition here in the United States is Christmas. So, like Christmas Eve, everyone and their family is shut in,
like inside their homes.
6 o'clock here, stores are closing up.
Right.
No, in the Caribbean, at least when I was growing up, I'm not sure if things have changed, but when I was growing up, that's where celebration starts, where all the stores are open. Everyone is in the city until 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, shopping for Christmas gifts and getting things for family and things like that, and just celebrating the holiday season. Labor Day, there's 2 beaches that's there, Fries and Fourth, and the 2 political sides. One set goes to Fries Beach and the other one goes to Fort Beach, and we see who have the most crowd. So it's a lot of fun, and we don't have baseball or football. We have cricket, and soccer. So yeah, it's a beautiful place for sure.
That is really fantastic. What I love is, man, what a lesson, because here in the States, well, you can tell me the difference if you feel the difference, because I haven't had that privilege of being a part of 2 different cultures like you have. And here in the States, I mean, I'm pretty certain that most people that are from a place like you're from would call us a big fat rat race. Like, we are just hustlers and doers, and we don't take that time to step back, to shut down things, to take some time for ourselves, to be with our families, to truly live life. And that's what it sounds like your culture was like. It's just like a culture of living.
It is. It really is. And at any given, at least I can say for us, in any given moment, we'll just be sitting down on my grandmother's porch, and just, everyone knew my grandmother. She was very much a giver, and loved people, very much a servant's heart as well. But, just sitting outside and just chatting for hours, with our neighbors, or my heading to the beach, and just chilling, there's poverty there as well, but you couldn't tell, that I remember my grandmother giving, people food and taking care of them and things like that. So, so yeah, there wasn't much of a, at least in my life, a lot of, I have to get. It was pretty good. Yeah, definitely.
Contentment.
Content. Definitely. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Is the word for sure. Mm-hmm.
So many of us are not content. Man, we just keep looking for the next big thing to fill us, to make us happy, right? So I just love that. Thanks for sharing that with us. So any of us listening, we need to make a trip to Antigua and get away, or just even in our own homes, right? Like, do a staycation and just relax and shut everything out and shut everything down and just be content with what we have and who we have in our lives right now.
That is so, because that's what my husband and I did this year. We did a staycation.
Nice.
Every year we usually go down to to West Palm Beach and be there with his family, his side of the family.
Okay.
But this time, with us just moving here, and we live where people vacation,
right?
We just decided to do a staycation and go to different restaurants that we hadn't been to, and just enjoyed each other. So it was awesome.
That's lovely. Oh, thank you for living by example, girl. So, hey, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
When and why did you come to the States?
Ooh, boy, that's where things will definitely turn in our conversation. But
all right, let's do it.
I grew up from my perspective, in a world where very Christian. Okay. And this is not to say Christian isn't Christian is a bad thing. But I grew up from what I saw from a very religious perspective of Christianity. It was what you wore. Like growing up, I could never wear shorts in the Caribbean outside of my grandmother's property. If I was going beyond her property, I had to have on a dress or a skirt.
What's interesting about that, Sam, is that's the equivalent of the Amish and the Mennonite culture here in the States. They are very religious in that way, and in terms of modesty and women dressing like quote unquote women, right? And just quick story for you. My mom and my dad, so they were my dad's parents were raised Amish, and they left the Amish church. So, and they went to the Mennonite church. So a little bit more liberal, but still very conservative. Yeah. Comparatively speaking. Right. And so they grew up Mennonite, and my mom and my dad were the first ones in their family to exchange wedding rings. So when you're talking about modesty and like that's the whole view there, is like anything flashy is vanity. Anything flashy brings attention to you. It's not humble. It's none of those things, right? So it's similar to what you're talking about. But yeah, they were the first one to exchange rings, and they did it under the table at their wedding ceremony. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, I get it. I get what you're talking about. And so how sometimes that, well, maybe you'll get to this a little bit later, but sometimes growing up in a very, not in a bad way, but in a very dogmatic kind of religious system where there's lots of do's and don'ts, right? It can kind of lead us away from what a true relationship with God is all about. So maybe you'll get to that later, but sorry, please go back to your story.
No. We're just threading in the right direction, but you're right, because, your parents, exchange wedding rings under the table. I couldn't wear nail polish. I couldn't pierce my ears. Yeah. I remember going into the city with friends and piercing my ears, and I got home, I had to take the earrings out and couldn't
let
put
the
them
holes
back
close
in.
up.
I could let the holes close up.
Wow.
So I just remember just being just a free spirit,
Yeah.
I loved
even with
hanging
all
out
those restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I loved hanging out with my friends. Of course, at church. Everything we did was church. Every time we met was at church, and so I became friends with, people, quote unquote, that was not of our same religious background. And, I just remember just beginning to feel like, I wasn't living up to expectation. And sometimes hearing that I wasn't living up to expectation. Yeah. And I, measuring up. Yes. And, and I remember one conversation between, my mom and my grandmother where, I was in my room and my grandmother was as I said, my grandmother's an amazing, beautiful Christian woman. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her prayers. And this was when I was 13, 14 years old. And I remember hearing my grandmother said to my mom, before she disgraces our family, you need to get her to the United States.
Oh my.
And
that's strong. Before she
yes.
disgraces the family?
Yeah.
Now, what was she referring to?
I had begun to like this guy who was who's our neighbor, and to people may be listening and said, oh my gosh, you're 14 years old. In the Caribbean, we graduated from high school at 15. So we're very mature,
right?
In age. We start school at 3. Some of us start school at 2.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So the British culture, as far as education, was very strict. Where you go to school, you learned, and it's education is very important.
Okay.
And so I had begun to like this guy who was very Catholic. His family was very Catholic. He had graduated high school and was working. He, at the time, he was, I think, 16, 17. I think he was 17. And of course I was 14.
Right.
And I just felt that, he was a good person. I had tried being friends with, the boys at church, but to me, they were just the same as the boys out of church,
right.
From
what
girl. I could see.
Yeah, say that. Yep.
Yes. And so I just didn't want to deal with the religion, with what I was seeing. And so I, as your parents did, I ventured out of our faith and wasn't connected with one of the boys in church, like my other friends. So I believe that's where all this started, because he was of this world. He had, friends who weren't, of Christian nature, to put it that way. They cursed, and they were loud, and, and things like that. So, that's where I believe a lot of it started.
So they kind of wanted to save you from going down a path that they feared would be disgraceful, primarily to the family, to the reputation of the family, or was it more out of concern for you, or was it more out of concern for a public disgrace?
I believe it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
So my family, they love me very much.
Sure.
But I believe definitely it was both.
Okay.
That that they didn't want to see me get pregnant.
Sure.
They didn't think that this was the right person. This was the right person for me.
Right. Like let's bring her up. Let's bring her up right in the way that we know is going to protect her. So they were being protective and loving. And so you moved to the States at around 13, 14?
Yes, I did.
And did you have a say in that?
No, it wasn't my choice at all. It was, it's time to move to the United States with your mom. So that was how it is. And I remember just, leaving everything that I knew. There is where I grew up. I went to elementary school, middle school, most of high school, because I only had one more grade before I graduated. So it was difficult. Even I was going to miss my principal,
Aww.
even
I
though
love that.
Even though, he called me out a couple times, for doing things, if I could give you this one joke, I remember my mom had sent me these really awesome pair of black shoe.
Yeah.
And in the Caribbean, we only wore uniform.
Okay.
Uniform to everything. Even college was uniform.
Wow. Very proper.
Very proper. So my uniform, I had to wear brown shoe and brown socks. This particular time, I wanted to wear my black shoe. And I was like, okay, there's hundreds of kids. It's going to be in the assembly because we had an assembly every morning before we went to class.
Okay.
And for the rest of the day, I can just sit in class. He doesn't have to see me after the assembly.
Yeah.
Here we are in the assembly. He's standing up and I'm behind my friends, and I don't know how he saw my black shoe. But the only thing I heard was, Christian, come up here to me. I was like, Daddy, God, you just do not like me, do you? It's like,
I thought I was going to get away with it.
Thought I was going to get away with it. It was, it was difficult.
When you moved to the States, you said that you left everything, yes. Right? And you yes. also left this young man, right? That you were in a relationship yes. with. And so yes. I'm curious to know, I know that's really hard anyway, when you're a young girl and you're in love and, mm-hmm. They can be your end all be all, your focus. So you had to physically leave. So did that relationship continue when you moved to the States?
It did. We continued a long distance relationship through letters and pictures and stuff like that.
Sure.
We really spoke because, of course, it was very expensive.
Yeah.
And so he would call me, but I couldn't call him.
Okay.
My mother would have killed me, but that's what we did. We continued through letters and, writing and pictures and things like that.
Okay.
So yes, it did continue. And so I was able to truly focus on school. I went to Northwestern High School, and I think I broke record there. I'm not sure if it's changed. And it was the time when Doogie Howser was out, if you remember that show.
Oh, yeah, The Young Doctor.
The Young Doctor. But I graduated from Northwestern when I was just turning 16.
Wow.
Because during those days, there wasn't any law where you had to be in a certain age to be in a certain grade.
Yeah.
So I just skipped. I tested into 11th grade, and then it transitioned to 12th grade. So graduated very young as well.
Yeah.
From high school.
Certainly.
Which was a story in itself.
Well, yeah, and I imagine that there was a lot of emotional challenges associated with that, because even though you were smarter, and perhaps, along with advanced education comes more emotional maturity, but that's not always the case.
Right.
And so you graduated, and then what did you think your life was going to be like? What were your hopes for your life?
My hope was to move on to post-secondary. My hope was to attend, Montgomery Community College, because I was young. And going off to college, wasn't ideal for me.
Sure.
And but all that came to a crashing end, where I had just met my dad as well. I know I didn't say this to you earlier, that I didn't meet my father until I was 16 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he was in the military, so he never saw me. He left before I was born. So
did he know you were? Did he know you were born?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was no contact between the two of you for the first 16 years of your life.
No contact.
So how did that meeting come about?
My mom my mom spoke to his mom a lot. And apparently my grandmother told my mom, his mother told my mom that he was going to be in New York, which is where my father family lives.
Okay.
And so she said to my mom, both of you should come up. So Nicole, my family calls me Nicole,
Okay.
could meet her father. And so even that in itself was like, okay.
So you're graduating at college on the cusp of graduating from high school on the cusp of being 16, and you're meeting your father for the first time, and you've only been 3 years uprooted from the culture that you knew all of your life. Yeah. So what does that do to a girl? What did that do to you?
The emotional roller coaster ride in my head, which I didn't know it was an emotional roller coaster ride in my head, was I just could not begin to grasp what truly, how much my life was changing and how much it was changing quickly. Meeting this person for the first time, are you Dad? Are you Anthony? Graduating from high school.
Yeah.
Looking to, okay, what direction am I going to go in? And my father promising to use his GI Bill for me to go to college. And so,
okay.
Financials wouldn't be an issue.
Uh-huh.
So that was good. And it was, I had just begun the process of getting my green card, to be to be a resident.
Uh-huh.
So there was just so much that was going on, that in my young world, I didn't understand, and not to the culture change as well, where I could, wear tank tops to school. I can wear shorts to school. I can, and for some people they may think, oh, what, it's just clothes. It's not a big deal. But, not being able to do things for such a long time in your life to now, oh, it's okay to do. Really.
Well, really shifting your perspective.
Yeah. Really shifting the perspective, and those two worlds collided when right after my graduation, or before my graduation, my family was coming up for my graduation, and ran off a guardrail on the highway, and was hurt very badly. My grandmother was hurt very badly. My mom's shoulder was broken.
Wow.
So it was a very bad car accident, and my mom being a nurse technician, she really couldn't work anymore. But there was still a little bit of hope. My aunt, we lived with, my aunt and my mom lived together. And so my aunt was, really trying to do what she could to help and to make sure that I was able to go to college. But my dad, when it was time to pay my tuition, could not be found. I think he was deployed or had moved to Germany or something like that, was the story I was told. And my mom wasn't working, so her resolve was, she spoke to my uncle back in the Caribbean and my grandmother, and she decided to move back to the Caribbean.
But to leave you here?
No. For me and her and my brother to move back to the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so those two worlds collided. Moving back, where, of course, I rekindled my relationship with the person I had liked,
right,
before I left,
and stayed connected with.
Mm-hmm. I was getting ready to go, go to college. And of course, the American system is what back then was just school system or educational system was somehow looked down upon, because it wasn't as robust and rigorous as, as it is in the Caribbean. You didn't take your Cambridge exams and, to get your A-level subjects and things like that. And so there were two parts of the college back home. There was the commercial, where it's the secretaries, and then there's the A-level section, where it's the lawyers, people who are aspiring to go to the, University of the Caribbean in Barbados or Jamaica, where you aspire to be a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor. So I remember hearing that again, she's not going to get into A-levels.
Who did you hear that from?
Just my family speaking to my mom about which direction of college I'm going to go into. And, she didn't take the Cambridge subjects, so they're not going to let her into A-levels.
So what did that do, that kind of thing? Like, I'm going back to, you said, we've got to get her, we've got to get her out of here. We've got to get her to the States before she, disgraces the family. Now then you're in the States and you get introduced to your dad for the first time ever, to your father, really. And for the first time ever. And then you lose touch with him again. And then now it's time to move back to your culture. And now you're being inundated with thoughts that you're not good enough to, messages really that you're not good enough to get into these A-levels. So those kind of three things combined, I would imagine that did a lot to form your view of yourself and your beliefs about yourself at that time, particularly as a young girl. Can you tell us a little bit about where your mind was and how you thought about yourself, your life, your value?
I was very much torn. And so, and felt unloved, honestly, and unaccepted, unappreciated. And so in my mind, it was, I'll show you.
Oh, okay.
I'll
show you so that I will feel loved. I will feel accepted. I will feel appreciated.
Yeah. So perfection rose to a high level.
Okay.
Where I played the role for a little bit.
Okay.
Where went to church, took part in, our youth meetings and, and did what I wanted to do until I wanted what I wanted. My friends were not my friends anymore. They had moved on to,
I see.
to other friends. My best friend was no longer my best friend. She now had another best friend. So there was even more changes of who I was.
Well, and now you were alone in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I felt like, I was going back. Sorry. I was going back to this world where, oh my gosh, I'm going back. My friends and, and I was going back to, this guy that I loved and adored and it was going to be better. It was going to be great. And then, no.
No, not so much.
Not so much.
Now, can I ask you, I want to jump forward because when you and I met for coffee, you shared a little bit of your story, and I want to make sure that the listeners have an opportunity to hear kind of your journey. I love your background because it really sets the stage for something that happened to you in your life, some paths that you chose, some doors that you opened, that I know that many women listening can relate to. And so this relationship that you had gotten into and that you went back to now, all of these other elements of really just being abandoned in many ways, being abandoned by your dad, being abandoned by your culture, not kind of feeling like you're fitting back in when you come back into your culture. All of these changes. And when you're young and you're that age, you're looking for that place, like you said, to feel accepted, to feel appreciated, to feel loved. And I remember you telling me that you found that in this young man, and that relationship ended up being disastrous, to say the least, for your life, for your well-being. So could you give us a snapshot of how you dove into that relationship head first, and what happened there, and how that really informed you and your views about yourself, and to the point where now you think very, very differently, obviously, about life and about yourself, and you're wanting to give back to young girls, and you're wanting to let them know of their value and their worth and their potential. So give us a snapshot of why that relationship was disastrous, and maybe some of the lies that you believed, and what ended up happening for you.
So it was a torn between myself, what was expected, and this boy.
Okay.
I was 16 years old. He was 19 years old. And there was still this riff of, you're not supposed to be with this person for a little while longer.
Okay.
And so he became my world. He became my world in so many ways, where everything I needed, it was from him.
Yeah.
I heard things like, you have a man now, you choose to be with someone. So, so that's your take, that's your role.
Okay.
And so I began to draw away from my family and draw even more closer to him, where the control was very evident. And that control turned into abuse. And
physical
not
abuse?
Verbal abuse, but physical abuse.
Wow.
Where it started first, where my grandfather had a birthday party for me, and he got into a really bad car accident. And one afternoon, I went to this young man's house. I sneaked to his house, because we lived very closely together, and I sneaked to his house, trying to not let my mom and my grandmother saw I was going to his house. And I went in, and we were, chatting and laughing, and I was in his room, and he was getting ready for work, and had my uniform on and everything. And by the time he had walking out the door to go to work, he had raped me. And walking out the door, because I still had my morals, walking out the door, he said to me that, I guess I'm your husband now. Because one thing I always said to myself is that I'll never sleep with someone that I'm not married to.
Right.
And I told him that. And so that is where the control and the me being a possession started.
Well, and I would imagine too, Sam, that so from this background, this very religious background, right? A lot of the do's and the don'ts that we talked about, and you having this personal desire to not have a sexual relationship with anybody until you were married. I would imagine too that some people would say, well, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to jump ahead here. I know that you stayed in the relationship with him.
Yes.
And some people might think, what in the heck was she thinking? She was raped. Why would she stay in the relationship with this man, right? And so I know you're going to speak a little bit to that in the time that we have remaining, Sam. But
yes,
my thought is that because of those strongly held beliefs that you had, that even though that was rape and even though that was forced upon you and it wasn't something that you chose, well, here's what it is now. So I've got to go ahead and make that an actuality. I've got to stay with him. I've got to be quote unquote his wife, which you eventually became.
Yes, I eventually became his wife. in and out of the relationship with him. I was beaten. I was bruised. I lost I lost friends.
Because of the isolation?
Because of the isolation, because the abuse became very evident by some friends. I had scars, teeth marks, and I was taken to places where he would take my life if I left him. I was shown how he would kill me if I left him. And again, my body
and you
was
believed
his
him.
Control. I did.
Yeah.
I did. Sherry, he was my drug. I remember just really quickly one day, just for the listeners to understand how deep the abuse is that one day I had my home that I was renting, so he stayed with me. And one day I went to see, my family, my aunt and my uncle, who didn't live too far. And he had come home from work to be with me. And I wasn't there. And he met me on the porch, grabbed my hair, and just beat me right there on the porch. And I remember just going to lay in my bed, and he came in, took my clothes off, and he gave me a bath and made love to him. And then I said I was sorry.
Wow.
I told him I was sorry.
Can you just let us in a little bit to that? Because I know that you're not in that place anymore, and I know that you can look back on this, but there's a lot of women who don't understand being in that place, and I know, or staying in that place, right?
Yeah.
And I know eventually you got out, but what was can you share with us the pivotal moment? I think it has something to do with the birth of your daughter, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But can you share with us the pivotal moment that for you shifted things and made you go, this is not right. Now is the time. I've got to get out.
Yes. Fortunately, for another conversation, I did get out of the marriage. Got my passport back, came back home to the United States, and but didn't heal. I didn't heal. I didn't seek help. I didn't seek therapy. I was on depressant, and entered into another relationship that was just as bad, but this time it was emotional. It was emotional abuse, where there wasn't any lifting up. There wasn't any bats. There wasn't any "I love you, please listen to me." There was "you're nothing." There was "you're a bad mom." There was "you're evil." There was all those emotional words that really dig deep, and then I got pregnant with my daughter, which was another roller coaster ride because I was told I couldn't have kids. So being on bed rest with her just began to let me view me, who I was, and to look in the mirror as to who I am. But that shifted because 6 weeks after she was born, I attempted suicide.
What brought you to that place, Sam? What brought you to that dark of that hopeless place that said, "Here, I've got this 6-week-old daughter. I need to die. I need to not be here."
When I thought back of, oh my gosh, my life. I was raped twice. I was in this bad relationship that still is hidden. I'm with this man who, again, abuses me, doesn't love me, is cheating on me. I'm the bad one. I'm the equation here that has been in all
I'm the
of
common
these,
thread.
Yes.
Wow.
In all of these situations. So it must be me. So this must be me. So I was like, I cannot let her grow up in my world.
Yeah.
I cannot. She's too precious for her to grow up in this world. So I thought dying would change that for her.
And thank God you did not succeed. You lived. You lived.
Yes.
And what was the turning point for you after that?
The turning point was, living, of course. I survived. The paramedics found me and everything. But then I began to live for her. I began to live for wanting her to be nothing like me.
That's powerful.
That was my goal in life, Sherry. I didn't want her to be nothing like me. Every time she said, Mom, I want to be like you. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to be like Kendall, not like me. And so just every time I saw something in me that that reflected me, I would get angry with her and say, no, don't do that. Don't say that. But then as she got older and I had my son, I was married to their dad, because I wanted to give them what I didn't have.
Okay.
Or give her what I didn't have. So I married her dad.
At any cost. Staying in an abusive relationship to give them that picture of something that you so desperately wanted for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And then she wanted a brother, so I gave her a brother. It's everything she wanted. But then I was on bed rest again with Samuel. But then Sam came forth. The phoenix rose. Because I realized after having my son and looking at my daughter, who was becoming more and more withdrawn, I knew I had to make a change. I knew I had to step out of that boat. I knew I had to, if not for me, for the sake of my children, I had to change that generational curse. I had to change the direction in which their life was going, or else I was creating my world and my daughter, and I would have been creating my world for my son.
Yeah.
And it was hard because I had given up my job at the U.S. Senate. I was a stay-at-home mom. So, Sherry, I had nothing. I had nothing. And so stepping out with nothing, and I want them to hear me, I had nothing. I had a penny. I didn't have a penny. I was dependent upon their dad.
But you were driven. You were driven at that point. Like, this is going to change. This stops here.
Yes.
This does not have to be my life. This does not have to be their life.
No, it didn't. And it was at that point where I went to my daughter's school. I saw this mom who was hurting, her child did not have anything to eat from the previous day, rushed in, can I have something to eat for my child? And that started with me supporting, the public schools, supporting low-income families, until I was offered a job to work at, one of the high schools in Maryland where we lived. And from that, the principal wanted, by then they had known my story, and they just wanted someone there within the school where they can see someone who had been through things but still can survive. And that created Girl Talk. And reaching out now, a nonprofit organization was established. And from that, Inspired to Lead, was created to support young girls. The Lotus program was created to support young boys. But in the middle of all that, Sherry, is that I became who I was serving. Because my children became on free and reduced lunch. I was driving without insurance. I had no medical insurance because my husband had taken everything from me. So I want our listeners to understand that it's leaving a relationship that you're dependent on isn't always going to be easy.
Yeah.
But your life is worth living.
Yeah.
And changing a cycle changing a cycle is so important. And so I didn't want to be that victim.
Yeah.
I didn't want my children to be a source of a broken marriage or a broken relationship. So I was transparent with my daughter for the first time. I told her of her mom's life and that she had more because she was being abused by her dad because she picked sides.
Yeah.
So she was in therapy and I was in therapy, and my son had, his psychologist at his elementary school that was working with him. But we have to speak up. I think we have to have a voice to say, hey, this 4,000 square feet house and these cars in the garage is not my life.
Yeah.
Is not my life. It's hell inside these four walls.
Yeah, taking off all that dressing and calling it what it is, because really all of that stuff, all of the accoutrements, all of the niceties of life can serve. We can believe that the outward appearances are the true reflection of what's going on inside. And I know for you, Sam, that you went from this place of believing that you were unlovable, unaccepted, unappreciated. And when you believed those things about yourself, that's how those abusive relationships came about, because you believed you weren't worth more than that, right? And then you had this shift. So it's not, it's not a wonder, sisters listening, it is not a wonder what we believe about ourselves becomes our realities. And it's not our fault, but it's a matter of us looking in the mirror and having these, revelational moments like you're talking about, where you go, this is not my life. This is not who I was intended to be. This is not who I am. I am valuable. I am worthy. I am loved. And if that had to happen by you looking at your children and saying they are valuable, they are worthy of love, they are worthy of peace in their home, then I am too, because I have to provide that for them. And that was a pivotal shift for you.
Yes.
Now you're believing that about you. Yes. You believe, right? What do you believe about you right now?
Oh my gosh. I remember writing, because I love writing. I remember writing a poem that's called Who Am I? Looking in the mirror itself for the first time. And when we see each other, I'll bring it to show you. But loved, that verse in Psalms 121, where I am fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah, girl.
And
yes.
He who finds a wife finds a good thing.
Yes.
I
am a good thing.
I am a good thing. And Daddy has a sense of humor, because when I begin to believe that I was a good thing, he brought me my good thing.
Yes.
He took me from the pit to the palace, and funny enough, he gave me my Joseph.
I love that. I love that. From the pit to the palace, and he gave you Joseph.
He gave me my Joseph. Yes.
I love your story, and I'm going to have you back for part 2, because I know there's so much more. But I do want you to if you can tell us in just a minute or two.
A minute, yes.
You've got Reaching Out Now, which is a nonprofit agency that is dedicated to communicating this message of you are loved, you are valuable, you are worthy, your life is worth living, and you are pouring that truth into the hearts and minds of young girls, 6th graders to 12th graders, right?
6th grader to young adults, through the first or second year of college, which is very pivotal, of course, having a junior in college right now.
Sure. So tell us how, Reaching Out Now has this vision to communicate that message to young girls so that they thrive in a life that is rightfully theirs, that is God granted to them, so that they know they are a good thing.
Yes.
And man, other people are lucky that good thing walks into their life, right?
Yes.
That's how we need to see ourselves, because that's how God sees us.
Definitely.
Right? We are a priceless treasure. And so that's what you're doing for these young girls. So what we're going to do here. What's that?
Living victoriously and not defeated.
Living victoriously. Yep.
their true potential is within reach. And we're just so excited to that the organization is here, and it's starting in Warren County Public School at Skyline Middle School. And we're just so excited.
I am so excited for you, and I can't wait. I know I'm going to be attending some of the events coming up. So here's what I'm going to do, because your organization deserves some exposure. Your mission deserves exposure. These young girls that you are ministering to and serving, like you said, I became who I was serving, and now you're serving people so they can become known and loved and valued and priceless, right? If they don't know that yet, you're serving them so that they can make that transition. And what a beautiful message. I want to thank you for that work that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's invaluable and it's eternal. And man, what a gift. I'm so grateful to God for not for placing you in those hard times in your life, Sam, but for bringing you to a place of revelation where he could take that, all of that tragedy that happened in the pit, put you in the palace, and allow you to serve others to also go from pit to palace, right? So thank you so much for doing that. And we'll include in the show notes, we'll include the Reaching Out Now Facebook link, Instagram link.
Thank you.
Website's launching soon, I think.
Yes, it is in a couple weeks. Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Well, here's one thing I'd like to do as we close out today, Sam. What's one truth that you want the women listening today to know and remember after our conversation ends?
Love yourselves. That sometimes is very cliche for us women.
Sure.
When we hear love yourselves and thrive, because we're doers and we're givers.
Yeah.
But someone said to me, you're nothing if you don't love yourself. If you don't take care of you, you're not able to take care of everything
That's right,
else.
girl. That's right. Amen to that.
Yes. So love yourself, ladies. Love yourselves.
Yeah. And when you know you are a good thing, you take care of good things, don't you?
Yes.
You invest time in good things.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah, girl.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, my friend, for being on the show today. I know we're going to have you back, and I can't wait to see what you're doing with Reaching Out Now and how you're serving the young girls. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and I pray the rest of your weekend is blessed, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sherry. So great spending my morning with you. I appreciate you. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
As always, I'm humbled you chose to join me this week for Thriving Thoughts. It's women like you who listen, subscribe, and give us thoughtful reviews that allow our message of thriving in any and every circumstance to reach even more women who need a healthy dose of truth speaking. I'm Dr. Sherry, and I'm grateful to be your Thriving Thoughts host, where we're shifting perspectives and speaking life to you so you can thrive. Be sure to tune in next week and share this episode with a friend. Until then, remember, overcome your little lies with big truths.